Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishnah Yomi, Masechet Maaser Sheni. We're up to Perek Aleph Mishnah Zayin. Today's Mishnah should be Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. The Mishnah today will discuss additional items that may not be bought with Maaser Sheni money. En lukhin avadim ushvachot v'karkaot ubehemat tmea midmei Maaser Sheni. We may not buy male or female slaves, land, or a non-kosher animal with Maaser Sheni money, because Maaser Sheni money must be used to buy food, like we learned in this chapter, Mishnah 5. And the Mefarshim explain, since a non-kosher animal may not be eaten, it is not considered food. V'im lakach yochal kinegdan. And if someone did buy any of these items with Maaser Sheni money, as a penalty, he must eat with Maaser Sheni sanctity food, meaning of equal value to the money that he spent illegally. For example, if he spent 10 dinars of Maaser Sheni money on a slave, he must take 10 dinars of chulin, non-Maaser Sheni money, and use it to buy food that he will eat in Yerushalayim. Now, the Mefarshim explain in Mishnah 5 in this chapter, we learned that if a person makes an improper purchase with Maaser Sheni money, the sale is not valid. The money still has the Maaser Sheni sanctity and must be used to buy appropriate food. The buyer is not penalized because he has not actually spent the money. But in our case, the Mefarshim explain, the reason the Mishnah says that you're penalized and you have to use regular money to buy Maaser Sheni food that you will treat with Maaser Sheni sanctity in Yerushalayim is because the Mishnah is referring to a case where the seller left town with the money and cannot be found. Therefore, the buyer is left with the purchase, and since he spent Maaser Sheni funds improperly, he is given a penalty. He has to take the amount from his own money and use it for Maaser Sheni appropriate food. And the Rav gives a second explanation. Inami matnitin ayri b'mezid. Our Mishnah is talking about when he purposely did it, but b'shogeg, the money would return back to its place, and there would be no penalty involved. Now, like we learned in Mishnah number 3, a person may and should use Maaser Sheni money to buy an animal for a shlamim offering, which is a voluntary korban. The Mishnah now discusses whether a person can use Maaser Sheni money to buy certain offerings that he is obligated to bring. The Mishnah says, En mivi'in kinei zavim. We may not bring pairs of birds as offerings for Zavim. The Mefarshim explain, the Torah tells us in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 15, Pasuk 2-3, that a Zav, and a plural will be Zavim, is a man who is Tameh because he experienced a certain type of bodily discharge. So he may not bring a pair of birds as offerings for Zavim. The kinei zavot, or pairs of birds as offerings for zavot, which Mefarshim explain is zava. The Torah tells us in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 15, pasuk 25, a zava is a woman who is tameh because she experienced a certain type of irregular menstrual bleeding. Now, to become fully told, the Torah tells us in the same chapter, Vayikra, chapter 15, pasukim 14 and 15, and pasukim 29 and 30, that to become fully told, a zav and a zava must bring 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves as offerings. The Mishnah says, again, En mivin kinei zavim v'kinei zavot. You cannot bring a pair of birds as offerings for zavim, or a pair of birds as offerings for zavot, v'kinei yoladot, or pairs of birds as offerings for women who have just given birth, which the Torah tells us in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 12, pasukim 1-8, that after a woman gives birth, she must bring certain offerings. A wealthy woman brings a bird and a lamb, and a poor woman brings 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves. Our Mishnah is referring to a poor woman. Chatot v'ashamot, or chatot, or asham offerings, midmei Maaser Sheni, using Maaser Sheni money, because since these korbanot are obligatory, they must be bought with one's personal money, not with Maaser Sheni money. The Mefarshim explain, since a person is obligated to bring these offerings, if he uses Maaser Sheni money to buy them, he's essentially using Maaser Sheni money to buy a debt, which is forbidden, which we'll speak about B'ezrat Hashem in chapter 3, Mishnah 1. And if someone did bring them using Maaser Sheni money, as a penalty, he must eat food that is of equal value to the Maaser Sheni money that he spent, meaning he has to take other money that is a status of chulin, non-Maaser Sheni money, and spend it on food that he will eat in Yerushalayim in accordance with the halachot of Maaser Sheni. Now the Mishnah gives a general rule and notes another permitted use of Maaser Sheni money. Zaklal, this is the rule. If any item other than something used for eating drinking, or rubbing onto one's skin is bought with Maaser Sheni money, Yochal Kenegdo, as a penalty, the buyer must eat food that is of equal value to the Maaser Sheni money that he spent. And the Mefarshim explain, in addition to food and drink, a person can spend Maaser Sheni money on oil to rub on his body, which we will discuss further in chapter 2, Mishnah 1, which we will actually be doing right now. That is in Rabotai of Mishnah Zayin in Perek Aleph. We begin now Perek Bet Mishnah Aleph. The Mishnah now discusses how Maaser Sheni money may be used in Yerushalayim. Maaser Sheni nitan la'achila v'lishtiyah u'l'sicha. Maaser Sheni produce is allowed to be used in any of the three ways: for eating, for drinking, and for rubbing onto one's skin. And the Mefarshim explain, when Maaser Sheni produce is brought to Yerushalayim, it must be used in one of these ways: eating, drinking, or rubbing onto one's skin. If Maaser Sheni is redeemed for money, the money must be spent in Yerushalayim on items that will be put to use, to one of these uses, either eating, drinking, or rubbing onto one's skin. As the Rambam tells us in Chod Maaser Sheni, chapter 3, Halakha 10. The Mishnah adds, Le'echol davar shedako le'echol. We are to eat only what's normal to eat, and therefore, if Maaser Sheni produce spoils, it does not have to be eaten, because spoiled produce is not normally eaten. And the Mefarshim explain, in general, it is forbidden to let Maaser Sheni food go to waste. If it spoils, however, a person doesn't have to eat it. And the Mishnah is actually telling us another halakha as well. The Rav says that Maaser Sheni produce may be eaten only in the manner in which that type of produce is normally eaten. If it's a type of food that is normally cooked, a person cannot eat it raw. And if it's usually eaten raw, a person cannot cook it. We are to rub only with what's normal to rub. Therefore, a person may not rub his skin with wine or vinegar of Maaser Sheni, because these are typically used for eating and drinking, not rubbing. Aval sach with a shemen, but he may rub his skin with oil, which is typically used for that purpose. And the Mefarshim explains, similarly, a person may drink only liquids that people usually drink. For example, he cannot drink plain oil because that's not usually drunk. And just to explain, the Mefarshim explain, when we said you're allowed to rub it onto your skin, a person is allowed to rub Maaser Sheni oil onto his skin, and these three uses of eating, drinking, and rubbing onto one's skin are learned from Psukim in the Torah. The Torah states explicitly that Maaser Sheni money should be used to buy food that will be eaten. Drinking is always considered the same as eating, and it's learned out from a pasuk in Tilim, chapter 109, pasuk 18, that rubbing one's skin with oil is considered like a form of drinking. The pasuk says, "V'tavo kemayim b'kirbo uchshemen b'atzmotav." It will come like water in his internals and like oil in his bones. The Mishnah continues now, "En mefatemin shemen shel Maaser Sheni." One may not perfume oil of Maaser Sheni by soaking spices in it, because the spices absorb some of the oil, and since the spices are eventually removed from the oil and thrown away, the Maaser Sheni oil absorbed in them will go to waste. And like we just said before, you're not allowed to let Maaser Sheni food go to waste. It was only if it spoils that you don't have to eat it. One may not buy spiced oil with Maaser Sheni money, because spiced oil is used only by people with very refined taste, and only types of food used by the average person can be bought with Maaser Sheni money. And the Mefarshim explain, since items not used by the average person are usually very expensive, spending Maaser Sheni funds on them is considered a waste of money. However, one may add spices to Maaser Sheni wine, because even though the spices absorb some of the wine, the spices are consumed together with the wine, and therefore no wine goes to waste. However, a person cannot buy spiced wine with Maaser Sheni funds, and Mefarshim explain, because spiced wine, like perfumed oil, is not something used by the average person. The Mishnah now, the Mefarshim explain, turns to another halakha related to spiced wine. If a person wants to redeem Maaser Sheni that is in a mixture with chulin ingredients, he needs to redeem only the value of the Maaser Sheni ingredients. However, when different ingredients are mixed to create a dish, the final product is often worth more than the sum of its individual ingredients. For example, if Maaser Sheni wine is mixed with chulin spices, the resulting beverage is worth more than the sum of the wine and the spices. So the Mishnah now explains how to calculate the value of the Maaser Sheni in such a beverage. If honey or spices fell into Maaser Sheni wine, and as a result the mixture went up in value, because the spiced wine is worth more than the value of the ingredients on their own, and the Mefarshim explain, although the Mishnah said a case where honey and spices fell in, the same would apply if someone deliberately added them to the wine. The Mishnah says, "Shevach lefi cheshbon." the added value is calculated by proportion. And as an example, the Mefarshim say, let's say honey worth 1 sela fell into Maaser Sheni wine worth 2 slaim, and the mixture is now worth 4 slaim. The ingredients were worth 3, but now the entire mixture is worth 4. If the owner wants to redeem the wine, he must redeem it for 2 2/3 slaim. Because since the wine accounted for 2/3 of the mixture's original value, we said the wine was worth 2 slaim, that's 2/3 of the value, and the value of the mixture rose by 1 sela, he must add 2/3 of a sela to the wine's original value. And therefore he would redeem it for 2 2/3 slaim. דגים שנתבשלו עם הכפלותות של מעשר שני והשביחו. Similarly, if chulin fish was cooked with maaser sheni leeks and the resulting mixture went up in value, meaning the mixture is worth more now than the sum of the fish and the leeks on their own, shevach lefi cheshbon, the added value is calculated by proportion, like we just said in the previous case. Isa shel maaser sheni she'afa'ah v'ishbicha. The Mishnah now says if someone baked a dough of maaser sheni ingredients and its value went up, meaning the bread is worth more now than the raw dough was worth, hashevach l'sheni, the extra value is added to the maaser sheni, because even though the reason it's worth more is because it was baked, which involves the use of chulin firewood, we do not say that some of the added value is attributed to the firewood. Rather, all the extra value is applied to the maaser sheni bread. So if the owner wants to redeem it, he must redeem it for the full current value of the bread. And the Mishnah now gives a general rule which explains the difference between bread baked with chulin firewood and a food that contains both maaser sheni and chulin ingredients. This is the rule. Kol sheshivcho nikar. In any case where the chulin item that causes, in any case where the chulin item that causes the added value is recognizable, nikar, meaning we can measure the mixture and see that it contains chulin ingredients. For example, if honey is added to wine, the mixture increases in volume. Hashevach lefi cheshbon, the added value is calculated by proportion. V'kol she'eno shivcho nikar, but in any case where the chulin item that causes the added value is not recognizable, we cannot tell by measuring the dish that it contains chulin, like by the firewood. Hashevach le'sheni, the extra value is added to the maaser sheni. Therefore, where firewood causes the dough to increase in value, the extra value is added to the dough. All added to the dough because the firewood cannot be detected in the dough. The chulin is only considered recognizable if it adds to the weight or volume of the dough. If the amount of chulin is too small to be measured by weight or volume, the Rav says it is not taken into account. Even if it can be tasted. It's only when it adds to the weight or the volume of the dough. That is the Rabotai of today's Mishnah Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.